Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, being a truther doesn't automatically make you better than a sheeple or make you a good person. If you're a truther, that doesn't mean you're a good person or that you're better than people who are, still in the um, grips of the illusion that's cast by the people running the system. Like it's not, it doesn't define you as a person, like as somehow you've made it to the next level. Like you're somehow, the sheep are on one level and truthers on another level. And I'm saying this because it needs to be said within the truth community that people who are truthers, for the most part now, have become arrogant. And I'm talking about a lot of just dumbass Marjorie Taylor Greene people, but across the board. But people who are, QB type people, Trumpers, or people still in the grips of the right wing delusion. And again, I wouldn't categorize them as truthers because they're not willing to confront their own. They're only willing to confront half the truth, right? That the Democrats are evil. Like they're not willing to look at the Republicans or at least, some branch of the complete right wing. They're willing to maybe say, all right, someone like Mitch McConnell, he's a part of it, but Trump isn't, right? This kind of thing. But I'm saying this because there are a lot of truthers just based in my, observation of the comment section and, more dynamics that have gone on over the years in the truth community. Most of it I'm not really, I'm not a community person, but I know there's all these debates and wars between truthers and, within the Q movement, there was lots of, people battling it out and flat earth movement, and even in like smaller subgroups, people, who, there's this idea that people have that they have to police the truth community, right? That they somehow have to, keep the truth community pure. And in itself, it's, if you wake up in the morning and you think that you're here to evaluate other people's commitment to being a truther, like you've got everything asked backwards. Like it's not my job or your job to do that, right? To determine who's like a shill or not, or who's, a real truther, all these things, right? And it's usually the people that disagree with you are the shills, the people that don't say the things that you want to hear or don't believe what you want to believe are the ones that are the bad truthers, and they're contaminating the truth community, right? And there's just a lot of truthers out there that, suck as people. They're just, horrible people, and they're losers and they suck, and then they realize, oh, the system's rigged, and then they blame everything on the people that rigged the system for them being a piece of boop. Like deep down, they know that they're a piece of boop, but they don't want to confront that. So now it's just that much easier to say, well, the system's been rigged against me all the time, so that's why I'm a piece of boop. And like I said, it's not. There's no purity thing. There's no purity in the truth community. There's no, But there's people, and when I criticize truthers, and I don't usually do it individually, but when I criticize people in the truth community, it's based in whether you're making the world a worse place or a better place. And that's not really for me to decide or to look into, or I'm not the judge and jury, and I don't want to be, but I know when people are making it a drag for me. Like, in terms of like the Q movement. Like the Q movement's made it a drag for everybody. They've just weighted us down. They suck, and that's because they're following something that's like the opposite of truth. The intelligence community have an operative that they've called Q. And whatever that is, I don't know the details, but I know enough of it to see what it is, a psychological operation, which they've fallen for. And they're over emotional, and, they think they're there to save the children, and, just all that stuff. And, they've been warped into thinking that they have some mission when they don't, right? Like that they're, this, getting their detective rings out of the Cracker Jacks box, box we were kids, there was these horrible popcorn candies called Cracker Jacks. I'm sure some of you loved them. I didn't. And they had a prize in the bottom of it, and it sucked, like, it just, like all these, Happy Meal toys or whatever it is, like things that just are cheap toys that don't have any real purpose other than to lure you into eating the poison. You lure kids into eating the poison that's in the Happy Meal or the Cracker Jacks box. But there was these, these junior detective decoder rings, and the ring would help you decode things to help you, get to the bottom of the, I guess it was, early conspiracy theorist stuff, get you to the bottom of the mystery, right? But, like I said, I don't watch other truthers for this reason, and I'm not here to call BS on people, like I don't do that in the community itself, because people in the community are, for the most part, powerless. You probably make the people in your life miserable. I mean, a lot of you, a lot, maybe, not here, I don't know, a lot of the people that, get pissed off at me and say they're unsubscribing and leaving or whatever, they make people in their lives miserable. There are a lot of truthers who are just miserable people to be around, just like there's people who are anti-abortion, and, on both sides, but particularly anti-abortion, because they have a good idea, which is to save the unborn children. Like they have this, it's a valid mission, to save the lives of unborn children. That's a valid mission. But the way they go about it and the self-righteousness, a lot of religious people are like this, constantly telling everyone else they're a sinner and, being miserable, horrible people to get along. They can't get along with anybody. And they don't exude God's love. They're not, loving people. They're not, they're fire and brimstone people. Constantly telling other people they suck and, just being, horrible and never confronting the issues within themselves, right? The darkness within them. They're attracted to darkness because there's so much darkness inside of them. And a lot of that exists in the truth community. A holier than thou type attitude. And so I have a couple examples I want to show you. That's why I'm doing the introduction. I have some Kennedy stuff and some, Trump stuff and other things that just came across my, YouTube having to recommend these things. And I'd want to talk about this anyway. But my idea of being a truther, or the way that I think of myself as a truther, are people that are seeking the truth, seeking the purpose of your existence here on earth. It's also being a spiritual seeker. You have to be both. And, truther, most truthers, it's being political and being in the material world. And the people control the material world and getting to the bottom of that. And it's so limited because if you're not seeking God, and not the God of religion, and that's the other part, because, there's people who think they're spiritual seekers, but they're spiritual seekers within the confines of their dysfunctional religion, right? We're all in a dysfunctional family here. We're all in a, warped family because our system, we're a family. People are in families. I've said this so much. Fish are in schools. Cows are in herds, right? Birds are in flocks. And people are in families. Every species groups together in some way. And, we have a smaller family and a bigger family. A tribe is a big family. A village-based system is a big family. And we have a nationalized internet family now. We have a different sort of a family that people identify with, people that don't live near them, and people who, are like them, right? And, people want to define other people by their race, by their religion, by their sex, by their, all these things. Superficial, externalized groups. And people can group together in those groups. And some of those groups have belief systems. But it's the quality of the soul that's important. Because people's souls are quite different. And I don't want to say soul, it's more the subtle bodies. But you have a spiritual essence. And you have had, either experience on earth, or you're a first-time soul. That's, this might be your first time as a human being. There are a lot of first-timers here that, now incarnated on planet Earth. And those first-timers are so limited because this is their first time of ever being a human being. It's like the first time you played a video game. you don't know what's going on. Like you're lost and you're going to wander into something and get killed quite easily. You know, the first avatar you use in a video game. Once in a while, there's a really highly developed soul that comes down that has a lot more, you know, going for it and um, spiritual like built-in spiritual evolution. And so, yeah, their first time soul is going to be different than a soul that used to be a dog in a past life or a cow, you know, the transmigration of a soul. And, you know, for those of you who can understand this or like grasp it, you know, I mean, that might be an indication. You know, there's a lot of people who they're locked into some binary system on, off, right, wrong, you know, good, bad, right? You know, and that's why if you dumb down your message, you know, which I won't do here, not like my message is brilliant, but is, you know, enough of a leap for most people who are binary in their, you know, in the binary in the way that I'm talking about it, on, off, left, right, you know, black, white, these things, and don't have the ability for abstract thought, which is like, I think, 60% of humanity. And you say, well, how can that be? Well, you know, go to Walmart, right? You know, like, or go to some country like when I was in India and see all the people who clearly don't have the ability for abstract thought. Just a lack of protein in their diet, a lack of education, and you know these things. There's lots of people out there who are, you know, very simple humans. They don't have to be, you know, bad or good. More often, they're going to be good because they're, you know, they're very simple and they need to stay alive. So they have to be good workers or something. You know, physical workers. They have some, you know, menial labor type job, but they don't have the ability for, you know, philosophy and abstract thought and to question the nature of their reality and these things, right? They don't have epiphanies and, you know, they just don't have those things. And because it's their first timer, and there's no shame in that because, you know, we're all, at one point, we're a first timer here on planet Earth, right? But it's just a different quality of a soul, and I mean somebody's spiritual essence. And, you know, it doesn't matter what race you're in. I mean, there's people who are in every demographic and every group that have some soul elevation, you know, whatever that means. And it's a struggle. Like it's a struggle to be a spiritual person. But if you're a truther, you know, to me, what a real truther is somebody who's seeking the truth, wants to find out why they're here. Like, what's your purpose? What's your real purpose? Not what the system says your purpose is, not what the system is trying to make you into an obedient citizen, a contributor, a materialistic person, you know, who's seeking wealth and fortune and fame and, you know, buying into the illusion, right, or whatever. But somebody who is finding out what their soul's purpose is here. And, you know, within that, understanding that there's a, you know, you're being warped and away from your spiritual purpose. That everything in our system is taking you away from your soul's path and your spiritual essence. And to me, that's what a truther is. And like, so again, it's more of a spiritual seeker and somebody looking to improve themselves, right? To, you know, benefit from this experience in some way and to, you know, become better than they were when they started. And also, you know, in that, make the world a better place in some way or another. That you're conscious of making the world a better place. It pleases you to do things that leave the place better than when you found it, right? And there are very few people like that in the truth community or anywhere else. It's a small group of people that, you know, you don't necessarily have to be nice or kind or like a, I mean, that should be like kind of part of it. Like, you know, you should be, you know, I mean, in terms of how you conduct yourself, but it isn't like those things, you know, someone being fake nice, like some popular girl in school trying to be fake nice, but she's really miserable and cutthroat and competitive, right? You know, or some like, you know, beauty contestant that puts on a fake smile. You know, of course, men are also guilty of these things, but you see it more obviously in women who, you know, pretend to be nice, but deep down they're killers, right? They have a killer instinct and they want to crush their opponents and they're competitive and, you know, whatever. Of course, men, like I say, are like that, but they don't have the the pressure that women do to, pretend to be nice and things like this. But I'm saying this that there has to be some personal accountability and realizing that you have to change, right? Like some part of you has to be better. Like that's just, a prerequisite for me to consider someone a truther. That you have to be, not in some obvious way. Oh, look, I'm just denouncing it. It's something personal to you, right? And that you have some desire to evolve and change. And like I don't talk about it a lot. Like, most of the things I do a lot of mocking other people and I do a lot of, whatever I talk about here on a spiritual level. But on a day-to-day basis personally, I'm working on self-improvement, right? And I guess the only way that you would really see it in, not just words, because people can, say that and not really mean it, is that I've evolved as a creator here. You've seen my evolution through my people have watched my videos for a while. Have seen my evolution as a person through my, creations here on YouTube, whatever, you want to call them videos. Not creations, videos. That there's an evolution of how I perceive. I mean, even this talking about the truth community this way, as opposed to focused on the Illuminati like I did in, say, earlier videos, right? That there's an evolution of the truther process, and you always have to evolve in your work, whatever it is, in your life. You have to do things better and better. Like everything that you do, you have to, look to improve what you're doing, right? Whether it be cooking food or even stuff like brushing your teeth and things. There has to be some little things that you do to improve. Otherwise, it becomes mundane and boring, right? Like some things, it becomes so mindless that you don't even concentrate on it. And, that's good to some extent, but then, it's always better to be moving forward than moving backwards. Like in any activity, you're going to peak. You're going to be like, all right, that's as good as I'll ever do this thing. And then it'll fade away, right? Like then you're just doing it worse and worse, right? Like until you're, not doing it at all because it's like it has an arc. So you always want to be improving, especially in your work and doing things better and better and, making the process more streamlined and being more efficient and these things. So that's the preface because there is this kind of purity in the so-called purity in the truth community. And I wanted to just put that out there, because I see, not just in the comment section, but my understanding of the whole thing and the different groups that people, are in. And there has to be some level of, commitment to becoming better in some way and finding your true path. Like, why am I here? This is a fundamental question that people have to ask themselves. What am I doing here on planet Earth? Like, why am I here? Like, what's the purpose of my life? And what do you think the percentage of people who ask that question? Maybe you're in 8th grade or, you're a young person. But then people stop asking it. Like, the average adult, how many people are thinking about that as opposed to just trying to get by and deal with a dysfunctional system that's stripped them of their prana, their life force, and they're basically bankrupt and have no, love energy, and they're just trying to get through it, every day, and, it's a mundane grind, and that just sucks, but you have to extricate yourself from that, in some way. All right, so let's get to the first Kennedy thing because I think it'll make more sense what I'm talking about when I put it in perspective. I did a voiceover. I was in the traveling thing, and this idea came to me about Trump. I played a compilation of Trump talking about violence, right? And so I want to find that. I don't even know where it is. I hope I titled it something where I can easily find it because I just remembered it this morning. I forgot all about it. But it fits right into what I'm talking about here, so I'm going to show you that as well. But let's get into it here. Okay, let's start here. One of my viewers sent me this, and I put this on the side in which I'm making Apocalypse Now videos for Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, but it fits in with this as well. I'll probably show you this in both of those videos. I'm going to make a COVID video today on masks. Joe Biden had an issue for my other channel. And then I'll start working on my next Apocalypse Now video. The COVID video is going to go on that channel. So that's a little bit convoluted. That'll be there on today, the 8th. The video I'm making right now is for the 9th. It's kind of weird that I'm doing this, but I woke up thinking about this, so that's where I'm going. I'm making a video that's for tomorrow, first. But anyways, one of my viewers sent me this, and I didn't really like it at first. Like, why are you sending me this? But, by the end of it, and sometimes I'll stop watching, and I almost did. But it was, to me, a very profound statement that the guy made here. And so let's watch this here.
I've worked with the Navy SEALs, and I asked them, how do you pick like the guys that go on SEAL Team 6, right? Because they're the best, the best, the best, the best. They drew a graph for me, and on one side, they wrote the word performance, and on the other side, they wrote the word trust. The way they define the terms is performance on the battlefield and performance off the battlefield. So this is your skills. This is how are you off the battlefield? What kind of person are you? The way they put it is, I may trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? This is what they told me. Nobody wants this person, the low performer of low trust, of course. Of course, everybody wants this person, the high performer of high trust, of course. What they learned is that this person, the high performer of low trust, is a toxic leader and a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over this person. This is the highest performing organization on the planet, and this person is more important than this person. I've worked with...
So that's really a profound thing, right? I think it's something that makes sense it's simple when you see it, right? I mean, regardless of whether it's the SEALs or not. But, the ability to trust people, trust is now a commodity. Trust is now almost monetizable in its sense. And it shouldn't be, because trust is more important than, money or whatever. And money is something you don't even trust, right? Because it's not real. But trust is a commodity in the sense that almost everybody has trust issues, right? And, who you trust and how you're able to trust people. And, are you able to trust people at all? Because people are untrustworthy. And people aren't being given morals and ethics now by their families and by their churches. And, not that people before were great, or, certainly not. The people before led to where we are now. But you used to get these things, fundamental character building blocks, and focusing on your personal character. Now that doesn't exist. Young people don't get it at all, which we already know. So let's go back here. I want to start here with Kennedy.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here. After 4 months of crisscrossing the country and speaking to thousands of Americans from all walks of life, I've come to understand that what our campaign really is the spearhead of a massive populist awakening. You see, our nation's most serious problems come from a single source: the entrenched corporate political elite. Government agencies...
Okay, so this is something that would appeal to truthers, right? I consider Kennedy a truther. I still do, after what he said about Palestine. He's in a situation where politics is an untruther thing, right? Politics is running for political office, especially, maybe at a local level, it's different. It's certainly different at a local level. But a national politician, running for as a national politician, is a non-truther activity, right? Because you're running into a system. You're trying to get a job in a system that's predicated on illusion, deception, and lies. That it exists to lie to you. It exists to manipulate people, to keep the system from keep people from confronting the truth, or knowing the truth, or accepting the truth that would take down the system. Because real truthers, people who find their spiritual path, realize that the system itself is a hindrance to you being a spiritual person. That everything in the system, whether it be the economic system, the political system, all the entertainment, all the stuff with the internet, everything that our system is, and the hyper-materialism on being a consumer and being successful, being, rich and famous and these things. The basis of our system is to lure you away from your spiritual path, or even demand and force you away from your spiritual path. And so the system is like your soul's enemy. It's all of our souls. It's God's enemy. It's preventing us from being everything that we are supposed to be. It makes us weaker and entitled and selfish and all the things that are bad. And it hurts us, and it's taking us backwards on our spiritual journey. It's causing problems that we're going to have to solve in future lives because of our, being lured away or forced away from our spiritual path. And so the system itself and the power in the system is the enemy of this truther, right? And so by trying to become president, running for president, you are like doing an anti-truther thing. And, because you can go in and try to be a truther candidate, but if you win, you're going to have to deal with the fact that if you expose the system for what it is, it'll collapse. And so if Kennedy was president and he told you the truth as president, the system would collapse. Of course, they would destroy him first because that's what they have to do, right? There are gatekeepers that are here to keep the system going. And since we're all 100% materially 100% dependent on the system, some of us grow a little food, some of us have a little, whatever it is. And so even if you're 80% dependent on the system, but the majority of people, it's 100%. And so that's the rub there. That's the conflict. That's the issue, right? And so the reason I would say Kennedy's a truther, because, in listening to his interviews and some of his process, again, it all could be made up, but it's not. Like, you can tell it's not. There is some part of him that is asking the question, why am I here? There's some part of him who's seeking that, right? And that in itself doesn't make him a worthy person to vote for or anything like that. Like, he's certainly broken and twisted, and he has his addictions, but he realizes he has these addictions. Like, he knows that on some level he's a piece of poop, right? That he's, a drug addict and he has a sexual addiction, and he's commented on these things, and he's aware that he has these problems. He's aware that he has these issues, and whatever he's doing about it is whatever he's doing about it. But he's conscious of that, and there's some battle there. And to what degree does that make him trustworthy? I don't know, because he hasn't been necessarily trustworthy with his, like I said, he cheated on his spouses and 37 times in 1 year. I mean, that's like somebody that would struggle to be trustworthy, right? There's a lot of lying and deception and manipulation that goes into something like that. And so, but he is different, right? He's different than these other candidates, because the other candidates are just doing what politicians do. And they use polls, and they understand where people are at. And they say things to connect with people that they may or may not believe in, right? And maybe Kennedy does that a little bit. He's good at working the audience. But there's some part of him who's a legitimate truther and can verbalize the truther theories and things like that, right? And so that's why I find him compelling in terms of his possible victory, because I like to see how it played out. But certainly if he was able to debate and be one of the two candidates, if he won the Democratic nomination or he ran as a third-party candidate, then that would be interesting as well, because he can verbalize these things and articulate them in a way that people can understand. They're not, the way that many truthers want to say them or hear them, but they are legitimate, truther theories and ideas, about, free speech and the environment and some of these other things that are, they're different than what other people say. But the whole idea of him running for president as a truther, those two things can't exist, right? Being president and being a truther. Because being president and being a person in power, if you seek power even behind the scenes economically, a part of keeping the system alive, which, you have to face up to the fact, every truther has to face up to the fact that destroying the system would kill billions of people, globally, right? Like, this system collapsing would mean the death and suffering of all of, many people dying and all of us suffering on a material level, like almost immediately. If the system collapses, things are going to get bad on the material level. They might be great on the spiritual level, might free you up on a soul level, which is great, which is, worth it. But, you have to accept that as a political leader, part of your job is to keep the system going. And that means your job is to lie to the masses, because if you told the masses the truth, then the system would collapse and it would, on a material level, we all be effed, right? And so that's the issue. And then you can, whether you're going to vote or not, or you care about the outcome or any of these things, it's based in that. Like, you have to be realistic about the quandary that politicians are in, that they can't tell you the truth. And so, stop listening to them as truthers, like people who listen to Trump as a truther or people listen to Kennedy as a truther. Like, their whole deal here is to, be in charge of a system that runs on lies and evil, right? But anyways, let's get back to it.
Congress, the defense industry, Wall Street, the media, big tech, big pharma, big ag, and pretty much big everything have a death grip on our democracy. And there's only one thing that can break that grip. And no, it's not me. It's you, the people.
Then we're screwed. If you're expecting the people to change, like, there's the savior complex, which doesn't work. And then there's the getting people to do it, and people can't agree with anything, right? I wouldn't want to, like, build a barn with a group of truthers, like, I wouldn't want to, do something with a group of, random selected truthers, not randomly selected truthers. If you just took a group of truthers randomly and tried to do something, you couldn't complete it because there'd be too many arguments, too many know-it-alls, too many people. This thing about trust, too, I want to say something here. There are a lot of people who are like, whether you're, into Kennedy or you're into, like, or somebody like Kennedy comes up or anybody, they're constantly like, oh my God, this guy's gonna trick me like I've been tricked before. Like, there's a lot of truthers that realize they were duped from birth by the system. And they're like, oh, you're not going to trick me again. I see what you're trying to do. You shill you. Like, this is how they go about life. Like, constantly paranoid and constantly, worried that they're going to be, duped again. And that's just no way to go through life. Like, you just have to be realistic practical about it, right? Kennedy is whoever he is. Trump is whoever he is, right? They're not your savior. You don't have to put your trust in them or other people. And some people you just have to put trust in, like your significant others, and, this idea that someone's trustworthy or not. But the majority of people, almost everybody, is not as trustworthy as they would be in a different system. This system makes you into an untrustworthy person because it divides you in different ways. You have your, job and your life as a person where you can't be who you are, your mundane job or whatever for most people. We have to, not keep your mouth shut and not tell people what you believe because it's, it's like that, right? As a truth or anybody else. And then there's just, your family, and there's all these different, aspects of your life where you're supposed to be one person when you're with this group and one person when you're with that group, and you're wearing too many masks and you have to fake it all the time to, just to, it's expected of you. And so, like, you're a divided person. You don't know who the hell you are, and you're not trustworthy. And then, you just maybe snap one day and you just leave your family, or, people just, like, whatever happens, they're just pressured too much. And, like, people aren't trustworthy because they don't know who they are and they don't have a system that is, that's true and honest. And, and so they're often in dysfunctional marriages that are based in lies and, all these things and all these other aspects of it. So sometimes people are just, like, screw the pooch and just say F it, like the year of the F it. But that's, where people are at. And so people are not trustworthy. And people don't get along. And you have to get along to complete something. So this idea that, let's listen to that again, right?
and pretty much big everything have a death grip on our democracy. And there's only one thing that can break that grip. And no, it's not me. It's you, the people. It's a populist movement that unites left and right, black and white, rural and urban, young and old. We can't just wait around for the Washington
the Washington
establishment to change their minds.
So, this is truther 101 kind of stuff. And it would make sense, right, as a candidate, a truther candidate, that you would say something like this. But I know something that you guys may or may not know. And he doesn't seem to know, or maybe he does, and he's just being dishonest about it. That people suck really bad. Like people are very low functioning right now. And the level of animosity between people and the lack of trust and people not willing to open up and, work towards something. And the fact that the system can't be saved, even if they did, makes this, a legitimate statement on his part. Like, it sounds good, but it can't happen. And I'm not, I'd like to see him do well politically. Like, it's hard for me to listen to him now, since the whatever happened with him. But, we're all flawed. And like I said, I believe him to be a legitimate truther because what he said here, him saying it's not me, is a lot better than Trump saying I'm the only one who can save the country, which I'll show you that clip, right? Well, here it is. Here's Trump saying that here.
They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. They want you silent. And I am the only one that can save this nation because...
Why you're the only one? What, are you Superman? No, you're not. You suck. Like, Donald Trump has been exposed. Like, he's exposed himself as what he is. And if you can't see it, you're willfully blinding. You're willfully, like blocking out what you're supposed to be seeing. He showed you, he's displayed himself for what he is. And him saying this, what a narcissistic thing to say. I'm the only one who could save the country. Really? You're that guy, right? We already know what you are, right? You mean the guy who banged Stormy Daniels and then signed a contract with her and paid her $130,000 not to talk about it, which is a fact. You're that guy who's going to save the country? Right? Guy who cheated on his wife and paid off with a disgusting porn star, like, right? You're the guy. You're that guy, right? Just stupid. And at least Kennedy is saying, that he's not that guy, and that's true. But we're not that guy. We're not that. We're not the people either, because it can't be saved. The system can't be saved, and broken people can't save the broken, or a system that not really broken, that's demonic. So broken people can't save a demonic system, a system that to be saved, to be fixed, it has to be more demonic, right? When its essence is demonic, which goes against divine will. That's what I mean by demonic. Something that goes against the divine order of things. And you can't make that into something holy. You can't purify that system. You have to destroy that system and start from scratch and build another one. And we don't have the capability of doing that because you would never get people to agree to a new system. We have a bunch of entitled complainers and who don't want to sacrifice anything and realize they have to give something up to get something better for the future of humanity. So they're just going to stick to the system because you can't, convince people to abandon a system that is right now meeting your addictions. The system's satisfying your addictions. And so you're not going to give up that, right? Because you're addicted to these things. And, change is hard. Like, change on the material level is hard. And the older you get, the harder it is, right? And so let's let him finish here.
Because they're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will never be moving.
That's 100% not true, right? And, he's just a liar. That's all he is. Like, he's telling you something when he's all about himself. He doesn't care about you. And he's proved it because he didn't stand in their way when he rolled out Operation Warp Speed. He didn't stand in the way when they closed down the economy, when he closed down the economy because they pushed him into it. And he didn't stand in their way when he rallied everyone to go up and do that thing on January, the big event in January. And then he turned on the people that, that he set up for failure. And I'll get into that with the violent stuff in a bit. Let's go back to Kennedy.
We can't expect Wall Street to stop strip mining the middle class of its equity and its wealth. We can't expect the military-industrial complex to promote peace, or the censorship big tech complex to promote freedom or freedom of speech. We need to do it ourselves. We have to take back power in this country for the people. Let me add one more item to the list of entrenched institutions, the Democratic National Committee. In an honest primary, the candidate with the most votes would be the nominee, right? But the DNC has imposed delicate rules that make it nearly impossible for an insurgent candidate to win. It has totally rigged the system.
Very early on, back in February, we passed a resolution unanimously within the DNC that we are all riding with Biden and Kamala Harris.
But you know what? Neither the DNC nor anyone else is going to stop us. President Biden's billion-dollar war chest is not a match for people power ultimately. That's why we're opening field offices in all 50 states. My campaign will be funded by millions of small donations from people who want to heal this nation. Now's a great time to make a donation to my campaign. Even $5 or $10 contributes to our momentum. Thank you, everyone, and God bless you.
All right, so, that sounds good. And there's truth in that, right? The DNC's rigged the system, and these corporations, military-industrial complex, are all part of the keeping the system, But without the military-industrial complex, we're effed. Without a strong military, and without the money and the power that we have, in the military, America would collapse. We don't have, manufacturing. We don't have, good people. We don't have, hard workers. I mean, we all, we're all entitled, selfish, internet addicted. And you look at, each generation is weaker and weaker. What we have is military power and, money power because we have the world's reserve currency. And if Kennedy was successful, those things wouldn't be the case anymore. So America would collapse, right? And so, what he's saying here is good. Like, it's true and it's good. But he's leaving out the part where if you were successful, it would take down the system, right? The system runs on evil and corruption. So I went to eat breakfast and something interesting happened. The TV was set, when I turned TV on to watch, whatever I watch in the morning, it was set to MSNBC, which I'm not even sure why that was. But they were covering a CNN poll. And it has everything to do with what I'm talking about here. I want to get to the Trump, calling for violence in a moment here. But this is what the CNN poll says here. CNN poll, Biden faces negative job rating and concerns about his age as he gears up for 2024. And CNN stepped on their own headline because this is Axios. And it says, 2/3 of Democrat-leaning voters don't want Biden as 2024 nominee. 2/3 of Democratic-leaning voters say the party should not nominate Biden for second term, according to a new CNN poll released Thursday. This is 2/3, right? That's 66%, almost 70%. I talked about this in my last video, how 70% don't want to see a Trump-Biden rematch, right? And so MSNBC decides to weigh in on this poll. And this is the way they, this is what I turned on the TV and they were saying, right?
And blah, blah, blah. Well, 2/3 of the folks in the CNN poll say they don't, they don't want to vote for, they don't want to vote for Joe Biden. They want a different candidate. When asked who they would like, 82% of people can't name a specific person. So I just really think that folks have to calm down, take a step back and say, what are we really looking at here?
So I would say, can you believe what she just said there? But this is, of course, the way they're going to react, right? Because she just said, you need to calm down and realize that this is the choice that we're giving you. is Joe Biden? Would you rather have Trump? Because that's what they're both saying. That's what both sides say. Oh, would you rather have Biden? Oh, would you rather have Trump? Instead of listening to what the people are saying. That's democracy. Democracy is, oh, 2/3 want to get rid of Biden, get rid of that MNFer. We can put someone else in there. Let's get rid of him, right? I mean, part of that is people don't have an answer. They want somebody better, but they don't see anybody better and couldn't agree on anybody better. That's the other issue, right? And that's what I was talking about, that people can't come together and agree on anything. And what they're saying, though, is that they don't want Trump-Biden rematch, that they don't want Biden, the Democrats don't want Biden. In reality, Trump has his delusional cult-like supporters, but everybody else wants the guy to disappear. But that's what they're giving you. And so when she says you need to calm down and accept reality the way it is, that there's a corrupt system and we tell you who to vote for, instead of saying this is a democracy and we'll listen to you. If 2/3 don't want Biden, get rid of the guy. Let's find somebody else. Let's have a real primary. Let's make the guy debate. Let's go out there and run another primary. But we know from what Kennedy showed you that the DNC already decided that they're going with Biden and they're going to rig the election so that no one else can win it, even though the majority of people don't want him. That's not democracy. Democracy is over. And you can say the same thing about Trump, where a small group of, people who are a majority in the Republican Party but a minority in the country are forcing Trump on everybody else, right? So I got a comment in a video I made, my last video on this channel. I talked about how there was a poll out there that said 70% of people don't want a Trump and Biden rematch. And I had a Trumper, which, Trumpers do, who commented, sorry, don't believe in that poll. Hashtag Trump 2024, 2 hearts. Again, polls are not to be believed because everything's lied and manipulated, but that poll is to be believed because the majority of us are over Trump and Biden. They're known entities, and people don't want to see him again. Democrats don't want Biden, and the majority of people don't want Trump. It's an overwhelming majority. There's another poll out there, maybe she was referring to this poll as well, or this poll specifically, that says 53% will never vote for Trump, and 12% would probably never vote for him, right? And so what you have is two unlikable candidates for most people, two undesirable candidates that can't get a majority of the votes. And so Trump has a passionate base of delusional cult followers, and everyone else dislikes him and is over him. Whereas Biden has really no fans, practically no fans, but they are counting on people hating Trump. Like, that's this election. We already saw the last election. It played out exactly the same way. So much so, listen to what they say then here on Morning Joe.
We are looking at the future of our democracy.
Yeah, and also we're looking at a president, an incumbent president running for re-election who has significant wins.
So first of all, I should have left that part on. That we're talking about the future of our democracy, right? That's what they keep on saying, that Trump will take away democracy when the Democrats have already taken it away. They rigged it against Bernie with Hillary in 2016. The DNC did. They rigged it against Bernie again in 2020 versus Biden. I mean, this was out in the open. It's been discussed. The former head of the DNC admitted to this. The temporary former head, Donna Brazile, came in as an interim DNC chair because they had to fire Debbie Wasserman Schultz because she ran the DNC into the ground. They were $12 million in debt, and they got hacked twice by their emails. Right? They fired her because she was horrible. Donna Brazile came in and found out they rigged it against Bernie, had to call Bernie and apologize. And then we all saw what happened in the primary. Nobody wanted Joe Biden. They didn't want Kamala Harris. She only got 1%. Didn't even get 1% of the Democratic vote. That's how unlikable she was. She had to quit. And then Biden lost New Hampshire and Iowa. Nobody wanted him then. And they rigged it. They came out and said there's no way Bernie Sanders is going to win because Biden came in fourth and fifth in New Hampshire and Iowa. He was basically tied for fifth in one of those two states, right? So I forget which, but it was, So he's really fifth and fifth. But the other candidates ran out of money, so Bernie was a shoo-in to win. And so they came out and said, no, we're rigging this against Bernie. They just admitted it. The same thing they're doing now against Kennedy and everyone else with Biden now. So that's the end of democracy. You're handpicking candidates. You're going against the will of the people. You're picking unpopular candidates. And then as Mika says, their position is, well, would you rather have Trump? That's their whole thing.
To brag about. And as we've been talking about today, he also has a lot of criticisms for his opponent that his campaign so far has held back on. But my God, let it rip at some point, Democratic campaign, Biden campaign, because you don't want to tamper with anything that the DOJ is doing. You can stay away from that and just talk about things that are obviously in the public arena, reported in major newspapers, out of the mouth of Donald Trump. If you just use what he has said and done and said he has done, you're good. You have an honest criticism of the direction this man is taking this country in, and it's a frightening one. Speaking of strategy, Molly, this one's for you. It's for the whole table. Republican strategists are reported looking to move away from the term pro-life after clear.
Okay, she goes on to say here, the background noise was my dog was like scratching a blanket. The Papillons do that, right? And so, I'm taping it off the TV because YouTube TV now has a video blocker, which sucks, and I don't want to get into all that. But what she was about to say there was, and I cut it off, I hit stop, but and I didn't want to re-record it, but what she goes on to say there is, after getting hammered in the election, the post Roe v. Wade, this is what saved Joe Biden in the midterms, is when the, pro-Republicans, in air quotes, Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and Joe Biden did get hammered in the midterms because of that, right? And now they've come to the realization that pro-life has a negative connotation, right? Just think about those words. Pro-life is a damaged term, which is, tells you where people are at. It also tells you how bad the pro-life movement has screwed things up, right? The whole thing's a mess. Because people really want to murder fetuses, I guess, right? So that's the, fetus murdering. That's, the reality of our twisted world we live in right now. But what she said there before that was, they're not hammering his opponent. Now, there is no opponent now. There are two primaries going on. A Republican primary, which Trump refuses to debate in, and a Democratic primary, which is Biden refuses to debate in, but also they're not allowing people to vote in New Hampshire because New Hampshire wants to be first. If you don't vote in New Hampshire, you can't get on the ballot in Georgia. This is the way DNC is rigging it. This is anti-democratic to say that there are two candidates when there's not. And it's bad journalism. Even for these guys who are horrible. And so what she's saying is, okay, you guys are saying you don't like Biden. 66%, right? 2/3 of the Democrats don't like Biden. All the Republicans don't like him. And most of the independents and everyone else doesn't like him either. And so the mass majority of people, if it's 33% of Democrats, it's really, that makes up about 10% of the overall populace, because there's independents as well. So it isn't like that's half the people. The Democrats aren't half the people. The Democrats are 40%, Republicans are 40%, and there's, whatever is in that's left, right? 20% independent and other. And so, there is only 10% of the people who want Joe Biden. 10%. It's like, a landslide against him. And she's saying, well, you guys got to go out and start hammering Trump again, because the Biden political ideology, the centerpiece of their political platform, is Biden isn't Trump, and Trump is horrible. And it's also what MSNBC and CNN do, which is what their whole business model is. Trump is horrible. That's their whole thing. And everything that they're doing, that they're pushing through, that nobody wants. All this agenda they've pushed through, the majority of people don't want it. The gender stuff, the Hollywood morality, the bogus war in the Ukraine, all these things. The majority of people are against these things. All of it. The Hunter Biden stuff, all of it. They're over it. They're over Biden. They're over Trump. And they're running these guys anyway because there's no democracy. This is, the democracy ended years ago, but this is a clear indication of it. They're not giving the people what they want. Okay, so I found the audio. I saved it under Trump violence, which was smart on my part. Sometimes I just save it with random letters and numbers. That's the majority of my audios I save like that. But sometimes when I realize I'm going to have to find something later, because it was like 12 audios ago. So I have a lot of audio files. But anyways, I just went out and went for a walk with my dogs and listened to it. And I was glad to put in this video because it makes sense. But let's review this. This is all the times that Trump called for violence at rallies with his supporters.
Incite violence.
Knock the crap out of him.
Like to punch him in the face. I don't condone.
So Trump has never been in a fight in his life, right? Unless he was in some sort of a bully situation. You saw the way when his stage was stormed, right? And I covered this in the audio, so let's just go through this.
Violence. And I don't talk about violence.
I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up because it was absolutely...
Yeah, it's definitely other people will. This is Trump gets other people to fight his battles for him. That's what he wants from his supporters. And then he claims that he's fighting for you when he's not, right? Trump is 100% about himself.
Disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it.
No, you won't. We already know you won't. When you realize it's going to cost you something, you'll bail. You didn't pardon any of those. He condemned the guys at the January event, right?
In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, they would not do it again so easily. We've become
Exactly. Why would we allow people to protest?
weak. We become weak.
And you know what? The audience swung back. And I thought it was very, very appropriate. The audience hit back. And that's what we need a little bit more of now.
Part of the problem and
So, he goes on like this. I showed you the whole clip before, but you get the idea. And he does this. Let's go skip to the end here. It's a little bit more here.
part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right?
I don't know if I would have done well, but I would have been out there fighting, folks. I don't know if I would have done well.
That's when he sort of cowered over here.
But I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
Do you plan on paying for the legal?
Okay, so, we know what happened. I won't show you this one because YouTube will have a problem with the video of the scene going on there. But this was where one of his supporters sucker punched an old white guy sucker punched a black guy at a Trump rally as the guy was, protesting, Trump. And, Trump supported these violent acts. So let's go to the audio that I already did here. It's late here on Tuesday night, and I've started making a video I would be probably posting on Wednesday, given all the things that happened in my other channel and waiting for the YouTube to approve, whatever. I've covered this before. And I read through some comments today, and somebody pointed out that segment about Trump inciting violence and Trump saying that, somebody should punch these, there's these hecklers out in the crowd that were yelling things at Trump, and Trump was, saying to his audience that someone should punch him in the face, and he would, and, he wishes he could, and not just about that, but other things. And he said he didn't know whether he could, it was going to be him punching or somebody else punching for him, saying things like this, right? And what he's doing is betraying his crowd. More than anything else, Trump is such a punk. And, when you have an audience, and I'm very conscious of this here, people are very wound up. People are ready to go because of the tension, the division in our country. People are very angry all the time. They're feeling hatred towards groups of people, other people. And if you seed that hate, if you fertilize that hate, right, you nurture it or you encourage it, then you're putting your audience in harm's way. I mean, other people as well, obviously, but mostly your audience. And so, I'm very conscious of being calm and not getting emotional. And, I see stuff all the time that's so effed up. And, I could get emotional about it. So many people do on the internet, rile other people up and, attract more viewers to my channel because they're feeling rage and, expressing that rage. But I wouldn't be doing you a favor. I'd be actually hurting you, even though you feel like it's the opposite. People think that Trump is verbalizing their anger, but he's inciting anger. He's done this a number of different times. And his rhetoric is, whether he's talking in violent language or not, but his rhetoric is to incite his followers to react this way. And when you provoke people into anger, you encourage their anger, you incite their anger, you inflame their anger, you exacerbate their anger. That anger needs to be expressed, right? You've seen this in your own life, right? Once you get angry, it has to be expressed in some way. And, one of the good things about my meditation is it's allowed me to feel angry or feel any kind of way, fearful, whatever, negative towards people, almost even hateful. I'm very conscious to not let the hate incubate because it makes you feel like crap, right? And when you get emotional and you encourage people to feel all these things, if you make people feel depressed, they're going to want to express that depression in some way. The ultimate expression of depression we know, which is suicide, right? And when you get people angry, they're going to vent that anger somewhere, and oftentimes it's going to go against their own family, right? If your boss yells at you all day at work and you're furious and you feel powerless, you can't express it to your boss, and you're driving home and somebody beeps at you, get out of the car, whatever, you're, fighting somebody, or you're driving in road rage and trying to cut other people off and putting yourself and other people at risk. Anger is like a poison, like a venom, like all these different conditions. You go home, you yell at your wife or your husband or your kids or your dog or whatever, or even worse, right? And Trump did that to his followers, to his, fans all the time. He made things worse, exacerbated it, put other people at risk, mostly his own people at risk. And the things he was getting people to do and encouraging them, the big event in January being the most obvious one, was not something that was going to help his cause or the cause of those people, right? You guys all realize that we lost, all of us, on the January thing. You know who won that? Biden and the intelligence community and the people who set that up and baited Trump into it, and the liberal news media. I mean, they talk about it all the time. Who doesn't want to talk about it? Trump or Fox News or even, these other candidates who all are. Even that guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, said he didn't agree with everything that Trump did on that day, right? You've lost that thing. You've lost the public opinion battle. That was a loss. And Trump encouraged that loss. He got baited into it. That's all you need to know about that piece of boop. He's a total piece of boop. He's a punk and a bad guy. Because that should have been enough for him to go away. And his supporters, who he sold out and encouraged and put in harm's way, riled them up and sent them down there to go into that trap. And then he disavowed them like a, total selfish, narcissistic punk. A guy like Trump who never been in a fight in his life. So I'm sure he bullied people when he could. But he's not a, fighter. And he's encouraging these other people to act out and express their violence. But, when you lose the big event in January, when you lose that, then it's still costing him. Now he's being litigated, and all these people associated with it are being charged, Trump supporters. I mean, look at all the people he's dragged down with him by not being able to accept that there was no path to victory for him. Trump had zero path to victory. And we knew this I knew this weeks before the big event in January, when the Supreme Court and the Republican, these guys who were counting the votes, who were Republican, state politicians, they held positions in the state of Georgia and Pennsylvania and these other states. Republican people were bailing on Trump. They weren't helping him out. The Supreme Court wasn't helping him out. Their justices weren't helping him out. Fox News wasn't helping him out. I knew it was over, right? Everyone kind of knew it was. And Trump was saying, no, there's a way. And the way wasn't going up and trying to intimidate the Congress, right? That wasn't the way. That was going to end in disaster. And he's very impulsive, and he doesn't care. He's a little whiny, spoiled little tantrum-having brat, right? Like, he's a punk. He's just not a person that thinks about the consequences of his actions and then takes responsibility for them. He riled people up, and, they suffered, and we're all suffering, right? The Democrats won. Trump and the Republicans lost, but all of us in the truth community have lost because of the censorship. Like, they were able to grab onto more. It was a power grab by the left because of Trump's selfish actions that had no chance of yielding a positive result. There was nothing good that was going to come out of that. And so, this is, for Trumpers who never get it, who never come around and figure this out, right? But this is, an indication of somebody who's shouldn't be in power and shouldn't be trusted because he's not thinking about you, because he's putting you in harm's way. He's putting us all in harm's way all the time. And that's how he treats his, the people he loves, his fans who love him, right? You know how he treats people who hate him. Like, he's just a black hole, right? He's a vortex of negative energy. Anyways, I just want to add that. Boy, it was fresh in my mind. I want to wrap this up here, but, in a sense, in terms of politics and the material life, in a way, you're playing with house money because of the impending apocalypse, right? When a system is wiped out, then, all the things that are good are wiped out, but all the things that are bad are wiped out as well, including your choices and things that you thought mattered at the time but don't matter now. And so, like, whether you vote or not, or whether, none of these things really matter all that much. Certainly the rhetoric and the, it's more important, the social impacts of what they're doing with Trump and Biden, running them again. I got a comment from somebody here. This is a classic YouTube comment. Please stop with racial targeting. Old white men is a hideous anti-white slur meant to dehumanize and demonize all white males. Bad boys and teenage boys encouraged to never make it to become an old white man. High suicide rates for over 2 decades has been of white males. Stop anti-whiteism. I get these kind of things occasionally. I know this exists out there because I said Trump and Biden were 2 old white men running. And why I said that, right, was not just because they were white men, but they were the, kind of white men, that old white men that end up being president. They are very similar to all the other presidents, Obama being kind of the exception, but they're all in a club and they all go to these schools, right? They all go to these, these elitist schools, and they're in these elitist clubs one way or another. They make it into the club, and then they get to be elected. And it's always the same thing. Like, not that a woman or a gay person or an Asian person or a person of color is going to change the dynamics here, but it's something we've seen over and over again. My whole life, I've seen old white guys running for president. And then you had Obama, which was, slightly different, but kind of the same thing. There was something new, but not really, And that was my comment. I'm not, obviously anti-white. It's just stupid. It's just that this, there's history here. Like, it's true, right? These are 2 really old white guys, right? And that's what they are. And, like, it's just another way of being butthurt, instead of everyone being hyper offended, right? But my point here is, this just folds into a larger point that the things that you're upset at now, or things seem, important to you, aren't going to mean anything. They're not going to mean boop when things start really going south. And historically, we've seen that, and you've probably seen this in your own life. You might be, whiny and complaining about things, and there's drama in your family, and then someone dies in a car crash, or somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, or something, really bad happens, something traumatic happens. And everything that you thought were problems disappear, because then you got real problems, like real, traumatic problems. And when there's worldwide trauma, which we're about to see, and systemic collapse and, the fall of the culture and all these things, none of these things really matter. And the good thing about that is, you can start fresh, right? Like all the addictions, all the things that that seemed important to you, all your little entitlements, all the things that, just, they're not really important, but you're just in the habit and you don't want to let them go. When there is something big that happens, it's a time to change and, get rid of old habits and, things that aren't really helping you and things that seem important, but they're really not. And that's where we are right now as a people, right? And them constantly running, candidates that nobody wants. There hasn't been really a good candidate in my lifetime. You could say Kennedy is slightly different, at least he's more of a truther, but, deeply flawed individual. And, all these various, not just politicians, because the politics doesn't matter as much as this is, what America's about, right? Promoting, not good people for the most part, as celebrities, as news, as journalists, as, corporate executives. The people who are doing really well, for the most part, are, been hardened and have been contaminated and are corrupted by the system. And so our leaders are like the worst of us, right? And even if they were good people at the start, they've been corrupted, and there's some scars. I've talked about that in the past. Your spiritual impressions are there, and they're flowering, to be a whatever it is, like to be a despot, a tyrant or something. And power, corrupts when people have character flaws. Whenever you have character flaws and you're given power, those character flaws are supported and nurtured and become, bigger and greater and more dominant in your personality. And so this is the idea behind spirituality and connecting to God and the purification process before you gain power, before you become somebody. If you're not pure, then power is going to negatively affect you. Not that the power itself is bad, but power magnifies what's already there in your personality. This happened with Daji and the heartfulness meditation that he did, where somebody who was spiritual and was doing a good job on a lower level was given the position of president and master of the system, and he folded like a card house, right? And his negative tendencies and things overwhelmed him, and now the system has been corrupted. And I've documented this in my Journey series. And so you have this in, various layers of our society. And all these dynamics and power structures and things need to come crashing down. And when they do, we're screwed materially. Like that's the grocery stores disappear, and our ability to, make money on jobs, money collapses, the economy collapses, and now we have to retrain ourselves to grow food and build a community and, these things to survive. But it's a chance for redemption in a way. It's a chance to get a redo on what is, for most people, lives really lived poorly. Like people who are living bad lives, negative lives. And for some people, it'll be a redemption where they'll be enlivened by the opportunity. And, that's one of the good things about what's happening now. And so, it really doesn't matter in terms of who gets elected at this point, because the system's already going to go in a certain way. But it does matter the rhetoric and the stuff that you're hearing and the lies and, them coming out and saying, we're trying to save democracy by rigging the election. That's what the Democrats are saying here. And the Republicans are even worse, because we know Trump is toxic. He's a toxic person. Not that Biden isn't toxic, but Trump is toxic, and people are enthusiastically, people that he's burned and betrayed are enthusiastically trying to get him to do another horrible job and betray them again, right? Like he isn't going to, bite you a second time. Of course he is, right? And so, it's just a weird situation that we have. And it's, depressing in the sense of, the powerlessness of the people and to get what they want, especially people who have been told their whole life that they're preferred customers. And now they're being told, hey, just suck it up and vote for Biden because you don't want Trump, right? Or the opposite, where you suck it up and vote for Trump because he's the only guy who could beat Biden. And not that the outcome is really going to change things. Either way, it's just going to make things worse either way. But it's the willingness to just repeat the same things, the same mistakes of the past, right? They said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over again and expect different results. And that's where we are right now. And so, anyways, I just want to put this out there. But in all this, seeking the truth and connecting to the divinity within you is always the answer. I mean, that's, you can figure that out for yourself, but certainly for me, that's what it is. That there's a divine path, you have a soul's path, and finding out what that is, no matter what's going on in the world, is job number one. And it's the reason for people being here. You have a soul's purpose, a soul's reason for being here. And figuring that out is your job and your job alone, right? You can't expect other people to figure it out for you or do it for you. And, if you don't really have a purpose, then, you should think about that, right? Like, why am I here? What am I doing here? What's my true purpose? These are questions everyone should ask. I mean, why wouldn't you ask those questions? And, if you come up with that, there's no God, that there's no purpose here, everything's random, well, that's something. But at least think it over and come up with what you believe and, what you think the overall purpose of life is. And you can pray about it if, you can't find an answer. But finding an answer, or at least heading in that direction, would be better than doing nothing, right? Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano, definitely going for the apocalypse. And the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.